Have you ever thought about what it's like to learn something really complex, like physics, but the textbook is in a language you're still figuring out? It's a massive challenge, right? Well, today we're diving into a fascinating teaching method called the spiral progression approach that might just be the solution. Let's break down how it works and see if it's the key to unlocking science for students all over the world.
All right, first things first, let's really get to the heart of the problem here. This is a challenge that educators, especially in places like Southeast Asia, are wrestling with every single day.
I mean, seriously, just put yourself in their shoes for a second. You're, 12 years old? You're trying to wrap your head around these huge ideas like force and matter and entire ecosystems, and now try doing all of that in a language that isn't your first. That's the daily reality for literally millions of students.
And believe it or not, there's a name for this. It's called dual coding load. Think of it like a cognitive traffic jam happening inside your brain. You're trying to do two incredibly hard things at the exact same time. One, process brand new, complex scientific ideas, and two, decode the language they're being taught in. It's a huge hurdle, especially in places like Thailand, where English language science programs are on the rise. So how in the world do you solve a problem like that? Well, this is where the spiral solution comes into play. It's a really creative approach designed to tackle this exact challenge head-on.
This slide, it lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got the traditional way, right? Linear learning. It's probably what most of us grew up with. You learn about, say, photosynthesis. You take the test and boom, you move on. Maybe you never talk about it again. But on the right, you have the spiral progression approach. And here, you never really finish a topic. Instead, you circle back to it again and again. But each time, you go a little deeper and add more complexity.
You know, a fantastic way to picture this is like climbing a spiral staircase. On your first loop, you get the basic idea. Maybe force is a push or a pull. Simple enough. Then, maybe a year later, you come back to that same spot on the staircase, but you're one level higher. Now you're ready for Newton's laws. The next time around, you're applying it to something even bigger, like planetary motion. See? You're constantly building on what you already know, making those connections stronger and stronger.
And this isn't some brand new, just invented idea. Nope. It's actually grounded in the super influential work of psychologist Jerome Bruner, way back in the 1960s. He's the one who argued that the best learning is recursive, meaning we're always circling back to those core ideas, reinforcing them, and adding new layers of understanding every single time. Okay, this all sounds great in theory, right? But the real question is, does it actually work in the wild? To find out, we're going to step inside a classroom in Thailand where this exact method was put to the test. So here's the scene. We're at Sisaket Wittayalai School. Researchers zoomed in on 76 7th graders and their 5 science teachers. In these classes, everything, physics, biology, you name it, is taught in English using this spiral method. And the big question, the million-dollar question was, does this approach really help students get over that dual coding load?
And to get the answer, the researchers did something really smart. They looked way beyond just test scores. They analyzed the whole ecosystem, 4 key areas: the students themselves, the teachers, the actual learning materials, and even the school environment. This gave them a complete 360-degree view of what was really going on.
Okay, so they gathered all this data. What did they actually find? Well, the results, they showed some really clear wins, but also pointed to some areas that definitely need some work.
Now check this out. When you look at what the students had to say, a really interesting pattern emerges. They felt super motivated. They said it massively helped with their English science vocabulary. That's huge. But notice that third bar. They were a little less sure about their long-term memory. It kind of suggests that while everyone's engaged, that deep, lasting recall might still be a bit of a hurdle. And that leads us to another key finding. The students felt that the assessments, quizzes, tests, were fantastic for tracking their progress. But look at the score they gave to learning materials. It's quite a bit lower. This hints at a major gap. It seems like the textbooks and worksheets weren't really designed to help them connect back to previous lessons, which, of course, is the entire point of the spiral method. In this quote from a related study, wow, it just hits the nail on the head. It gets right to the core challenge for teachers. When your students are struggling with the language, there's this immense pressure to just simplify the science. Do you make the English easier but risk watering down the actual concepts? Or do you push for that scientific rigor but risk losing your students in all the vocabulary? It is a constant, difficult balancing act. So, after all that, what's the final verdict? Is this spiral progression approach the magic bullet we've been looking for? Let's pull all these pieces together. Here's the bottom line. The research is pretty clear. The spiral approach is an incredibly powerful tool. It gets students excited, it gets them engaged, but, and this is a really big but, its success is not a given. It's not some magic wand you can just wave. Its effectiveness, it turns out, depends almost entirely on having the right support systems in place.
So what does that right support look like? Well, the study points to 3 absolutely critical things. First, teachers need specialized training, not just in science, but in how to teach science in a second language. Second, the materials themselves, the textbooks, the videos, they have to be designed for the spiral approach, with those connections and reinforcements built right in. And third, the teaching needs to be full of visual aids and hands-on labs to help lighten that dual coding load we talked about at the beginning.
So if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. The idea behind the spiral progression approach is rock solid. It just makes sense. But the idea alone is not enough. It's the implementation, the day-to-day work by well-trained teachers who have the right tools that makes all the difference between success and failure. And that leaves us with one last, pretty important question to think about. This research gives us a clear roadmap. It pinpoints exactly what teachers and students need to really thrive. So, if we know what it takes, what's stopping us from using these lessons to rethink science education for everyone, everywhere? That's definitely something worth chewing on. Thanks for joining me.